Many couples don't realize that even after decades of living together, there are still simple things about their partner they haven't truly understood. One of them is touch. Many husbands sincerely want to make their wives feel loved, yet unknowingly end up making them feel awkward, uncomfortable, or even distant. Not because their love has faded, but because the human body and emotions never stop changing, especially as we grow older. I'm Dr. Ayunindia, and I want to speak heart to heart with you, husbands and wives who may already be in your 50s, 60s, or even 70s. We all know that at this age, the body is no longer what it used to be. Stamina decreases, hormones shift, the skin becomes more sensitive, and the mind tires more easily. Yet, behind all of that, the need for closeness and affection actually grows stronger. Sadly, many couples simply don't know how to maintain that closeness. When we were young, we could touch our partner with spontaneity and passion, but now what's needed is no longer speed or strength, it's awareness, gentleness, and empathy. That's why it's so important to understand where your partner's body feels comforted by touch and where it shouldn't be touched at all. I still remember the story of Mr. Suryo, a 65-year-old man from Yogyakarta, a loving husband who never forgot to express his affection to his wife. But every time he tried to get close, his wife would just stay quiet and smile faintly. At first, he thought she had lost her desire, until one day we had a long conversation. It turned out that wasn't the case at all. It was simply that the way he touched her no longer matched what her body needed at this stage of life. This happens to many couples. We tend to think that intimacy is always about physical activity, but for a body that has passed its youthful years, the right kind of touch is no longer about stimulation. It's about safety, respect, and emotional presence. A woman's body, especially after menopause, goes through many changes. The estrogen that once maintained moisture and elasticity of the skin begins to decline. As a result, sensitive areas become drier, thinner, and more easily irritated. Meanwhile, other parts can actually become more sensitive, such as the entrance of the vagina, a place where comfort now matters more than physical desire. I often explain to my patients that touching your wife's body at this age can't be done the same way as when you were younger. There's no room for haste anymore. Nothing needs to be proven through speed or strength. What's needed now is patience, communication, and warmth. Imagine this. Before touching, a husband holds his wife's hand, looks into her eyes, and gently asks, "Are you comfortable if I come closer?" That simple sentence can soften the heart far deeper than 1,000 sweet words. Because deep down, what mature women seek is no longer proof, but the feeling of being respected and accepted as they are. I remember the story of Mrs. Ratna, 62, from Malang. She told me that her husband used to be in such a hurry whenever they were intimate, as if there was never enough time, she said with a small laugh. But after they learned to communicate, everything changed. Now her husband rarely speaks. He simply places his warm palm on her lower belly, looking into her eyes with a gentle smile. "It's strange, doctor," she said. "We used to need so much movement, but now with a soft touch, I feel loved again, like a newlywed." Mrs. Ratna's story isn't just romantic. It reflects very real physiological and emotional changes. When the body has aged, a light touch can mean so much more than a firm one, because a body that has gone through so much needs time to trust again. And that trust is built not through force, but through tenderness. Medically, gentle stimulation around the vaginal entrance helps increase blood flow and activates oxytocin, the hormone that makes us feel calm, safe, and connected to the person we love. So, the real key to intimacy in later life isn't about technique, it's about the intention and sincerity behind the touch itself. And this is where we begin to understand. To make a wife truly happy, it's not just about finding the secret spots on her body. It's about rediscovering the heart that once felt so close but slowly drifted apart over time. Every gentle touch, every loving gaze becomes a new way of saying, I'm still here, with you. After understanding that touch in mature age is no longer the same as in youth, we now enter an important part. Where exactly do women want to be touched so that they feel comfortable and loved, not only physically, but also emotionally? I often tell husbands who come for counseling that a woman's body after 50 speaks a new language. What used to trigger a quick response years ago may now take longer and require a different approach. Yet if we can understand this change, the intimacy that forms becomes far deeper, gentler, and more meaningful. The first point to understand is the entrance of the vagina, or what is medically known as the introitus. Many men assume that a woman's pleasure lies deep inside. In reality, after menopause, it is the outer area that becomes most sensitive. Why? Because as estrogen levels drop, the inner tissues become drier and more easily irritated, while the nerve endings around the entrance grow more active and receptive to gentle stimulation. That's why touching this area with light pressure and slow rhythm produces a calming effect rather than a shocking one. I often compare it to gliding your hand across the surface of water. No need to press hard. Move gently so that the ripples feel natural. I once heard from Mrs. Ratna, who told me how gentle touches in that area made her feel embraced in a new way. She said, "It felt as if my body was being remembered by the person I love." Such touch is no longer about passion alone. It's about creating a sense of safety within a body that has gone through many changes. A 2020 study from the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Indonesia also showed that slow, careful touches around the outer vagina can trigger the release of oxytocin, the hormone that fosters calmness and emotional closeness between partners. This means that before the body is ready for deeper intimacy, the heart is already open. The second sensitive point, often forgotten, lies just below the clitoris, around the urethral opening. This tiny hidden area is rich in nerve endings that connect to sensitive tissues along the vaginal front wall. Gentle strokes here can create a warm sensation that gradually spreads throughout the pelvis. I still remember Mr. Harun, a 70-year-old from Palembang. He once said, "I realized I never truly knew my wife's body." One evening, after reading an article about female anatomy, he tried touching that area very softly, not pressing, not rubbing, just caressing with a warm, steady hand. That night, his usually quiet wife suddenly held his hand and looked into his eyes. He said, "It felt like we were speaking without words." Stories like this aren't coincidences. Medically speaking, gentle stimulation around the urethra triggers the release of endorphins, natural hormones that soothe and comfort the body. It's no wonder many women feel more relaxed even before intimacy begins. The key is not speed or pressure, but tenderness and mindfulness in every movement. Many husbands ask, "How do I know if my wife enjoys it?" The answer is simple. Observe her breathing and body language. When her breathing evens out, her shoulders relax, or her body steadily leans closer, those are signs of comfort. Mature women often express pleasure not through words or sounds, but through quiet physical cues. The third point, often discussed yet misunderstood, is the G-spot. Many men know the term but not how to treat it properly, especially in women over 50. Anatomically, the G-spot lies along the front wall of the vagina, about 2 to 3 centimeters inside, facing the abdomen. Its texture is slightly different, a little rougher compared to the surrounding tissue. However, the G-spot is not just about physical sensation. For emotionally mature women, touching the G-spot gently means touching their confidence and soul. At this age, their bodies no longer seek fast thrills, but the calm that comes slowly and sincerely. I recall a couple from Balikpapan, Mr. Hendra and Mrs. Rahayu, married for more than 40 years. They once admitted that their relationship had grown dull. After learning to listen to each other and trying new ways, Mrs. Rahayu said, "Now I don't need to pretend anymore. Every touch from my husband feels full of good intention." Mr. Hendra no longer rushed. He simply pressed the G-spot softly with his fingertip, keeping a steady rhythm while observing his wife's breathing. He said,
What I seek is no longer the climax, but the moment when we feel peaceful together. That is the essence of true intimacy. Not about how fast, but how deeply we can truly be present. A study at Cipto Mangunkusumo Hospital in Jakarta also found that gentle stimulation of the G-spot in postmenopausal women helps improve blood circulation in the pelvis and maintain tissue elasticity. In other words, touching with love not only warms the relationship, but also supports a woman's physical health. The beauty of all this lies in awareness that at a mature age, we no longer need to chase passion as we once did. What we truly need is to rediscover the meaning of touch itself, as an expression of love, not merely desire.
Ladies and gentlemen, just as there are parts of the body that can bring warmth and intimacy, there are also parts that should not be touched without permission and readiness. In relationships that have lasted for decades, we often assume that because we know each other so well, there are no more boundaries between us. Yet the human body constantly changes, and with every change comes new boundaries that must be understood with care. Knowing where not to touch is not a sign of rejection, but a mark of mature and empathetic love. When a husband understands and respects his wife's body, he is actually protecting the trust they've built throughout their lives together. The first area to be cautious about is the anus. I know this topic is often considered taboo. However, for many Indonesian women over the age of 50, this area is not something they wish to be touched without consent. Most husbands don't mean harm. They simply want to try something romantic or different. But for a mature woman, this area becomes extremely sensitive. Medically speaking, the muscles around the anus tend to weaken with age. The skin becomes thinner, blood flow decreases, and some women may have a history of hemorrhoids, small tears, or irritation. Sudden or forceful contact can cause pain or a feeling of discomfort and insecurity. The body may instinctively tense up even before she can express her feelings in words. I remember hearing from Mrs. Ningsi, a 65-year-old woman from Pekanbaru. She said softly, "Every time my husband touches that area without saying anything first, my body freezes after, not because I'm angry, but because it feels uncomfortable." Like many women, she chose silence, not because she agreed, but because she didn't want to hurt her husband's feelings. From her story, we learn that silence does not mean consent. So if your wife's body moves away, her shoulders tense, or her expression changes when touched in certain areas, don't take it as rejection. It might be her body's gentle way of saying, "I'm not comfortable." Respecting that signal isn't weakness. It's a sign of love expressed with maturity and awareness. True intimacy isn't about trying everything. It's about knowing when to draw near and when to stop. The second area to avoid is the cervix, or the neck of the uterus. Located deep inside the vaginal canal, it's rarely discussed openly. Many men believe that deeper penetration brings more pleasure to their partner. In fact, for women who have gone through menopause or childbirth, the cervix is often the most pain-sensitive part. Medically, after menopause, the tissues around the cervix become stiffer. Blood flow decreases and sensitivity to pain increases. When touched too deeply or too quickly, pain can occur suddenly, causing the body to tense up and lose its sense of comfort. I once heard from Mrs. Marlia, a 70-year-old woman from Pontianak. She said, "I was too afraid to tell my husband not to go too deep, doctor, because I didn't want to hurt his feelings." So she remained silent, enduring the discomfort each time. In truth, such situations can be avoided through gentle communication. A simple question like, "Are you comfortable like this?" already shows respect and care. Sometimes small adjustments, reducing depth, changing angle, or slowing movement can make the experience far more pleasant and pain-free. At this stage of life, comfort matters more than intensity. The goal of intimacy is no longer to reach a climax, but to share a journey that brings peace and closeness to both hearts. Understanding your partner's physical boundaries, including avoiding deep pressure on the cervix, is an act of loving wisdom, a form of care that grows not from fleeting desire, but from a lifetime of mutual respect.
The third commonly misunderstood area is the nipples and breasts. It's true that in youth, these areas often played a central role in intimacy, but after age 50 or 60, the body changes drastically. The hormones that keep skin and breast tissue soft decrease. The skin becomes thinner, fatty tissue shrinks, and the area around the nipples grows more sensitive, sometimes too sensitive, even to the point of discomfort when touched suddenly. I once spoke with Mrs. Davy, a 66-year-old woman from Banjarmasin. She said, "I'm happy my husband still wants to hold me and be close, but sometimes when he touches my breast suddenly without saying anything first, I feel startled." She wasn't rejecting him, she just needed time. Time for slower, warmer, and safer touch. That's why before touching this area, it helps to warm your hands first, or start with light touches over clothing. Observe your partner's reactions. If her breathing slows and her face softens, it means she's comfortable and ready for deeper touch. But if her body moves away, just stop. There's no failure in pausing. Every pause is a chance to understand each other better. In the end, true intimacy is no longer about passion, technique, or physical strength. True intimacy begins when we learn to listen to our partner's body with an open heart. Because every inch of skin we touch carries a story of time, endurance, pain, and love that lasts. And our role is not to conquer it, but to honor it.
Ladies and gentlemen, after discussing the parts of the body that bring comfort and intimacy and those that should be approached with care, it is time for us to look deeper into the true meaning behind it all. Because, in truth, the essence of intimacy in mature age is not about the body, but about two souls that still wish to understand each other. Our bodies may age, but the human heart always keeps a space for warmth, to be loved, and to love in return. At the age of 50, 60, or even 70, we are no longer seeking validation as we once did in youth. We no longer need to prove who is more passionate or who lasts longer. What we now long for is far simpler: the peace of sitting beside the one we love, and the quiet assurance that even though time has changed everything, love remains, grows, and still deserves to be nurtured. I often tell my elderly patients, love does not fade with age, it merely changes form, from passion into gentleness, from desire into sincerity. And that transformation is what makes love in later years perhaps the most beautiful stage of all. We no longer race against time. We sit together, gazing at the face of our partner, a face perhaps lined with wrinkles, yet behind those lines lies a long story of struggles, tears, laughter, grown children, and a home that once weathered storms yet endured. All of it is proof of a love that has stood the test of time. Ladies and gentlemen, intimacy is not only when bodies unite, it is when hearts understand each other. When we know when to hold, when to give space, when to ask gently, and when to stay silent, simply listening to the breath of the one we cherish. I often hear from couples married for decades. They say, "We're not like we used to be, doctor. We don't always seek physical intimacy, but we still hold hands every night before we sleep." To me, that simple sentence is more romantic than anything else, because what they embrace is no longer just the body, but togetherness itself. And that togetherness does not happen by chance. It grows from honesty, mutual respect, and the courage to speak openly, to talk about things once considered taboo, about comfort, about pain, even about the fear of losing desire. Yet when such things are discussed softly, without shame, without blame, the relationship becomes stronger than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps now is the time to begin a new kind of conversation, not about your children or grandchildren, but about you too, about what still brings you joy, about the little things that may have been forgotten. Ask gently, "What makes you feel calm when I come close?" Or say sincerely,
I want you to know that I'm still learning to understand your body. Simple sentences like these can awaken something that may have slept for years. Because for a woman, feeling appreciated and heard often means far more than any hurried gesture of affection. And for a man, hearing his wife say, "I feel safe with you," is the greatest gift time can offer. Please remember this. True love never grows old. It only changes how it shows itself. Once it was expressed through passionate embraces. Now it lives in the calmness of a hand being held. Once it came with laughter and adventure. Now it arrives through prayer and gratitude each morning when you open your eyes beside the same person. Every gentle touch, a hand on the shoulder, a soft back rub, or a warm gaze, is a small prayer keeping the marriage alive. I truly believe that a healthy relationship in later life depends not only on physical well-being, but also emotional and spiritual health. When two hearts are willing to understand each other, every bodily change can be accepted with grace. There is no more shame over wrinkles, no fear of weakening strength, no distance created by time. Only two people choosing to keep caring for one another, no matter what. So, ladies and gentlemen, never think that love at this age has ended. This is precisely when love is tested to see whether it can still exist unconditionally without expectation, simply out of the desire to see your partner happy. Nurture that love in new ways, with gentle touch, with honesty that no longer hides behind pride, and with the belief that every small caress is the most beautiful form of everlasting affection. I, Dr. Ayunindia, truly believe that a relationship built upon tenderness will never fade, because in the end, it is not time that makes love grow old, but when we stop trying to understand each other. So let us begin again, to keep learning, listening, and caring for one another. Because love that is cared for with heart will stay warm, even when the hair turns gray and the hands begin to tremble. And there, ladies and gentlemen, lies the true beauty of a love that never ages.